Hello, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, the Israeli victims of the Istanbul New Year's attack return to Israel. The Attorney General approves an investigation of Prime Minister Netanyahu, and some polls come out that could shake up the Israeli government. I'm Natasha Kirchak here with the latest news in Israel. The body of 19-year-old Lian Zaher Nasser is being returned home to Israel today following her death in the terror attack in Istanbul on New Year's Eve. The young woman was with 3 friends at the exclusive Reina nightclub during the shooting rampage that killed 39 people. All 4 are from the Arab city of Tira in central Israel. The Islamic State has claimed responsibility for the attack, saying it was perpetrated against a Christian celebration of a pagan festival. Turkey launched a manhunt for the shooter, who has yet to be captured. Over 60 others were wounded, including another young Israeli woman, 18-year-old Rawa Mansour. After being airlifted back home, she spoke to paramedics with Israel's Magen David Adom Emergency Medical Service, for which she volunteers.
שלום, קוראים לי רवा מנסור, אני טסתי ביום שישי לאיסטנבול. אתמול היינו במסעדה ארינה ונפגעתי ופתאום שמענו יריות ונפגעתי ברגל וביד. אני מאוד שמחה שחזרתי לארץ.
Mansour is now hospitalized at a local hospital in moderate condition. She and the other 2 surviving Israeli Arab women report that the terrorist was dressed in a Santa suit and was shouting Allahu Akbar as he opened fire. They say they were lucky to escape with their lives. No funeral details have yet been set for their friend Lian. Her father says he urged her not to go to Turkey and how he wishes she never left Israel.
אמרתי לה שהמצב הביטחוני לא טוב, וזה מסוכן מאוד. והתעקשה ללכת, כי החברות שלה רצו גרוף. המצב הביטחוני בכל העולם זה ככה. לא היה כדאי ללכת.
The family asked for help bringing the teenager's body back from their local municipality, which turned to the Israeli government. The request was approved immediately, and now the state is coordinating the mission, including logistics, transportation, and finances. The humanitarian organization tasked with the responsibility says it honors all dead regardless of religion, race, or gender, and would make sure Nasser's body is returned home for burial in Israel as soon as possible. The investigation into the graft allegations facing Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is intensifying, and police say the Israeli leader will be questioned under caution about the case at his home today. The Israeli Attorney General has reportedly approved a full criminal investigation into charges against a prime minister, that he and his family members accepted valuable gifts from at least 2 businessmen during his tenure in office. One of the businessmen has been identified as an Israeli and the other is based elsewhere, but has interests in the country. The suspicions center on breach of trust and the unlawful acceptance of gifts, although so far there have been no accusations of bribery. Police say they've already amassed a great deal of evidence and that about 50 people, including World Jewish Congress President Ron Lauder, have so far been called in to testify. Local media is reporting that Netanyahu's son Yair will also be questioned. For his part, the prime minister has agreed to give the investigators as much time as they need today, after they complained about how long it's taken to set up the session. Netanyahu is denying all the allegations against him as baseless and insists the investigation will come to nothing because he says there is nothing. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is being investigated on suspicion of graft for allegedly accepting expensive gifts on behalf of himself and his family. Joining me in the studio today to discuss the allegations is Avihu Sofer, teacher of political science at Haifa University and a columnist with the Ma'ariv News. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for inviting me.
So let's begin. Do you think that there is any validity to the allegations against a prime minister? Why or why not?
Well, for a start, I don't know, and I don't think that anybody else knows. I think that everybody is spreading around bits and pieces of things that they've heard, might have heard, and maybe it's some kind of wishful thinking of some of the people. But I don't think anybody really knows if there is or there isn't anything serious in the allegations against Netanyahu. One thing we know and one thing we trust in Israel. Israel is a law country, meaning we respect the law, we respect the police, we respect the Attorney General, but, and that's a big but, before Netanyahu's investigation, there has been a whole process of media hound behind him, basically as, let's put it this way, if we didn't manage to beat him in the elections, then maybe we'll take him off his chair through these allegations.
Now let's talk about the Attorney General. You've made it clear that you believe that he's been pressured into opening these investigations. Why would he do that, and who's pressuring him?
Well, it's not that I believe. He has been pressured. It's very simple. Look, there is some kind of coalition in Israel which collects media reporters that are acting like politicians and not like serious media people. We have politicians from the left and from the center that would like Netanyahu to go. And one time after another, he's beating them in the elections. And we have people that have all kinds of interests in Netanyahu going. All those people manage to build together some kind of syndrome and some kind of atmosphere that there is something there behind Netanyahu. Now, they've been pressuring the Attorney General through weeks and month and month and month to investigate him, to find out what's happening there. They're throwing something in the media and the next day someone else is writing about it. And then there's a whole talk about it. And all of a sudden, the Attorney Generals feel guilty that he is not investigating Netanyahu. Now, they've been pressuring outside his house. 1 week after another, there has been demonstrations investigate Netanyahu.
But is there a chance that, he could be following some legitimate lead?
1 second. Israel is democracy. And people have the right and the freedom of speech, and they should say whatever they want, and they should protest, and everything is great. But the atmosphere that was created behind Netanyahu is something that even Professor Alan Dershowitz, someone that we know from the Harvard University, said that he hasn't seen something like that, and it's basically shaking the infrastructure of democracy, meaning that a prime minister cannot work and do his job. I mean, the prime minister has a lot of work to do. The prime minister of Israel is probably one of the most complicated roles that a person can be, maybe except from the president of the US, but I doubt what's more complicated. Now, what do we want? Do we want him to be busy all day long answering questions of media reporters about some gifts that maybe has been given and not given, blah, 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 or should he deal with the problems of Israel?
But in the case that these are, legitimate leads, how should the Israeli government be dealing with this?
How would you know if these are legitimate leads?
Well, that's what we're looking at.
You don't know, and I don't know, and our viewers don't know. But what we know is that somebody is creating an atmosphere that those are legitimate leads. And what I'm trying to say is that they're creating a trap, that there's no way out apart from investigating him. Now, I don't think that the Attorney General, the only reason he's done that is because of that. I think that he probably has some doubts or suspicions or questions he wishes to ask, and that's great. If there are things that needs to be cleared, they needs to be cleared. I'm talking about the atmosphere that was created, mainly in the media, that has joined some kind of politicians in Israel that are against Netanyahu, and that one time after another are losing to him in the elections. And the people of Israel are, moving in between all those different disinformation which is spread all over them.
So now, I read an article last night on Ynet saying that Knesset member David Amsalem is attempting to change the law so that police would not be able to investigate acting prime ministers. Is there a chance that could happen, and would it undermine democracy in any way if it were to?
For a start, it won't happen, and it's not a good idea. And it's an idea which is trying to say the prime minister has problems, but give him time because he needs to run the country affairs. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that specifically in regards to Netanyahu, there's a whole junta, we say it in Hebrew, I don't know how it's called in English, which has joined forces together, and those are media people, media reporters, together with politicians, and a lot of money which is spread in, maybe from overseas, I'm not sure, and all those people are working against him, and everything is right as long as he won't be in his chair. I think that in a democracy, people should go once in 4 years or 5 years or whenever the government is losing its grip and elect the prime minister, and not try and find all kind of different bits and pieces and through that destruct his work and destruct the faith of the public in him.
All right, now you wrote in the Maariv News that destabilizing governments through the media investigation is a growing trend that's not only taking place here in Israel, but in other places as well. What do you mean by that? Where else is this taking place?
Well, basically what we see today with the media networks and Facebook and Twitter and so on, it's a long story, but I recommend our viewers to go and read the New York Times and read an article about Ben Rhodes that explain Ben Rhodes, Obama's advisor, that explained how they created the whole resonance information box to confuse reporters that were writing about the Iran agreement. And they created the whole atmosphere and they created a whole public image in regards to something which Obama wanted to achieve. What I'm trying to say is here, people are putting the goal first, and afterwards we're trying to use the means in regards to achieve this goal. It's not that it grew up from naturally, that basically Netanyahu is guilty and we need to investigate him. No, Netanyahu needs to go. Now let's see what we can do in regards to make him go. And we are after him, and we're using forces, and we're using media, and we're using money, and we're using strategic planners, we're using advertising offices. Everything is right as long as he goes.
All right, well, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
And we'll see what happens today.
Yes, thank you.
Turning to national Israeli politics, it looks like the Yesh Atid centrist party would be the biggest winner if elections were held today, which seems to be making many of the ruling coalition partners very nervous. Aaron, what's going to happen?
Well, the Netanyahu coalition has got to be pretty nervous right now after the latest polls. And there's a lot hanging in the balance. It really all just depends on how much support the Yesh Atid party can garner.
Israel's Interior Minister Aryeh Deri is using the carrot and stick approach towards Yesh Atid, which means there's a future in Hebrew. On one hand, Deri is urging the party's head Yair Lapid to join the Netanyahu-led government in the next election rather than challenge the prime minister for leadership. On the other hand, Deri, who chairs the ultra-right Shas religious faction and is a key member of the coalition, is making it clear that he'd never endorse Lapid as the next Israeli prime minister. The remark indicates the ultra-Orthodox parties would act as a united front to prevent the centrist party from forming government. That's primarily because the religious parties strongly reject Yesh Atid's demand that Orthodox Jewish men be drafted into the army to serve alongside their secular counterparts. The latest polls reflect a major gain in public support for Yesh Atid, raising the 11 mandates it has now to a whopping 27. By comparison, if Israeli elections were held today, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's governing Likud party would drop to just 23 seats from the 30 it currently holds.
Israel's high-level security cabinet has made a series of unanimous decisions to no longer return the bodies of Hamas terrorists killed during attacks and to launch a new plan of action to secure the release of 2 Israeli civilians and the remains of 2 soldiers being held hostage in Gaza. Despite behind-the-scenes negotiations, the Palestinian terror group has so far refused to return 2 mentally challenged Israeli men, Avraham Mingitzu and Juma Ibrahim Abu Anima, who apparently entered the enclave on their own. Hamas has also rejected all attempts to retrieve the bodies of IDF Staff Sergeant Oron Shaul and Lieutenant Hadar Goldin. Even though the Israeli army has expressed certainty that both young men were killed in the 2014 Gaza war, the Gaza rulers have refrained from confirming their deaths. As part of its campaign to mock the Israeli government's failure and up the price of a prospective exchange, Hamas just published 2 propaganda videos. In one, particularly cynical footage shows a holding of a pretend birthday party for Shaul. The families of both missing soldiers say they approve the increased efforts to secure their son's remains, but express deep disappointment that it's taken so long. Israel often goes to extreme measures to retrieve the bodies of soldiers or those being held hostage. In order to free IDF soldier Gilad Shalit after 5 years of Hamas captivity, Israel released 1,027 Palestinian terrorists from prison in 2011. The sharp differences between Israel and the Obama administration became strikingly clear during Secretary of State John Kerry's Middle East address last week. Kerry called out Israel's commitment to a 2-state solution, and Prime Minister Netanyahu was quick to respond. ILTV's Steve Leibowitz asked Times of Israel editor David Horowitz whether the settlement regulation bill supported by Netanyahu does indeed indicate his commitment to settlements over a diplomatic solution.
Netanyahu is being very, very unclear about his vision of where he wants to see Israel's borders in the future. Because if they're going to push forward with a resolution that will, in effect, legalize Israeli settlements in these outposts, that is basically closing the door on the concept of a two-state solution, is it not?
Well, he would argue that that's not the case. I think there are lots of people who would say, if you're trying to create a climate in which it's going to be possible to progress, why would you continue to send people to areas which you don't theoretically intend to retain, and at the very least where you're going to make it harder for Palestinian moderates to credibly say the Israelis want peace? But he would argue, excuse me, Kerry spoke of 90,000 Israeli Jews on the far side of that barrier, of whom 20,000 were added in the last 8 years. That's the size of a small town. We have 2 million Israeli Arabs. We're not asking them to leave. We're not kicking them out. We resist Lieberman's suggestions to remarcate the border. You know, there are enclaves in all kinds of strange territories all over the world. The Dutch-Belgian border, enclaves of one country within another country's enclave, and crazy stuff. If there's a desire, he would say, then these do not need to be impediments. He would say, I am not dooming the two-state solution. He would say the two-state solution depends on Palestinian recognition of Israel's Jewish sovereign legitimacy. And once we've got that from them, you know, we can solve this. That's what the Prime Minister would say. Many of his critics would say, with all due respect, you are not making a credible assertion so long as you're actually complicating the problem on the ground. That would be the argument.
The issue of Amona was playing out, as it happened, during a week when the poverty report came out here in Israel about the very, very large numbers of Israeli poor, the largest number in all OECD countries. And people were arguing that we can throw so much energy and money, effort, political will at the issue of Amona, the issue of 40 families, when we are paying so little attention to the poor in this country. Is that something that disturbs you?
Look, this is an atypical country. In a country which was not grappling with, you know, an environment that is so challenging, where security was not such a high priority, then the inequalities in the Israeli economy would obsess people, right? Sheli Yachimovich, who used to lead the Labour Party, is a credible champion of the less well-off Israelis. She would be a very successful politician in a country. She lost that job. She didn't beat Netanyahu in elections because other issues take precedence. You know, when push comes to shove, people's concern about, you know, being able to continue living and so on. But we shifted in this country from an agricultural economy which had less inequalities than the high-tech technology economy, innovation economy that we have now. It's an amazing thing that we were able to flourish on human brainpower, on that resource. But it means a lot of people got left behind. The poverty statistics themselves, you can argue, you know, till you're blue in the face about how credible they are, and how, you know, if you're working on medians, then if everything is moving forward, then other people get left behind. But broadly speaking, it's not as bad as they say it is. You know, I think it is certainly credible to say that people are being left behind, that the gap between the well-off and the poor is widening in this country, that lots of people, you can't come close to getting on the housing ladder. It is marginalized, you're right, because of all the other sort of national security-related imperatives. The question is, at what point can you no longer push it to the side? I'm not sure that we're at that point yet. You know, in the run-up to the last elections, if you look at the polls, Steve, people were always talking about the economy, and yet when push came to shove, Netanyahu, whose strength is not, he would argue he's been a fantastic economic leader of Israel. But, you know, the party that ostensibly champions the working class, Labour, which is, it's not totally credible either, didn't do as well as it would have hoped to. Kulanu, the party of the finance minister, Moshe Kahlon, had a bit of a showing, but Netanyahu won the election. Netanyahu won the election because ultimately, you know, security concerns prevailed, I think you have to say.
David Horowitz, thanks so much for being with us at ILTV.
Thank you.
Well, the numbers are in, and we know that as of December 31st of 2016, Israel's population stands at 8.63 million people. According to the Central Bureau of Statistics, the number of citizens in the Jewish state jumped up by 2%, which is equivalent to 167,000 souls. 24,000 of them were Jewish immigrants, 27% of whom came from Russia, 22% from Ukraine, 18% from France, and 10% from the United States. Meanwhile, the stork delivered 181,000 babies to the Jewish state this past year. If we take a look at the figures by ethnicity, we see there are 6.45 million Jews, which is exactly 74.8% of the country. The Arab population is 20.8%, which amounts to nearly 1.8 million people. About 384,000, or 4.4%, are defined as members of other groups. Statisticians say they expect the Israeli population will pass the 9 million mark by the first quarter of 2019, and 10 million by 2025. By the way, when Israel was founded back in 1948, there was an 82.1% Jewish majority, with 716,000 Jews living in the country, along with 156,000 total of those who weren't Jewish. Other year-end reports are revealing that 2016 was another record-breaking year for incoming and departing air traffic at Israel's Ben Gurion International Airport. Aaron, fill us in on some of these numbers.
Well, the statistics are really very high and very promising. It basically shows that, according to the Israel Airport Authority, over 17 million travelers have gone just through internationally through Ben Gurion Airport.
Nice.
That amounts to an 11% increase of more than 1.6 million people in 2015. There were a total of 110,000 incoming and outgoing international flights, in addition to 600,000 domestic flights within the country. Since Israelis made up about 70% of the passengers, the bad news is that the remaining 30% indicates a 5-year record low in traffic by foreign nationals. A lot of travel agents are crediting the increase of Israelis going abroad to the open skies policy that Israel Transportation Minister Israel Katz signed with the European Union. The program enables more foreign airlines to operate in the Jewish state, and the increased competition is adding up to less expensive fares for plane tickets. Today, there are more than 100 carriers flying in and out of Ben Gurion to 135 destinations around the world.
The holiday season may have come to an end, but it doesn't mean that vacation time is over. For the first time since 1951, Israelis can look forward to even more vacation days per year. Israeli workers will now receive a minimum of 12 vacation days a year starting this Sunday. That's 2 more days per year according to Israeli law. The initiative was started by Kulanu Knesset member Rachel Azaria, who believes the new law will improve productivity. Israel has one of the lowest productivity rates in the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, yet has some of the highest numbers of work hours, meaning there's a connection between low productivity and the number of additional hours and days worked. Now, Israeli workers who have been employed at a company for less than 4 years will get 12 days of vacation and can look forward to even more days off after their 5th year of employment. Even though the news is being warmly accepted across the country, Israel still has some of the fewest vacation days of any country in the OECD. The vast majority of member countries have over 20 vacation days a year. Well, I guess the bottom line is that more vacation needs are needed here in Israel, and hopefully one day we will get to 20 days. All right, moving on. Apparently, the Israeli government's top New Year's resolution is geared towards a greener future and a higher quality of life for everyone, by launching a new plan to get taxi drivers to switch to environmentally friendly vehicles. The Environmental Protection Ministry announced this morning that any interested drivers will receive a little more than a $5,000 discount on purchasing one of 1,500 new hybrid taxis, available at participating Toyota dealerships around the country. Right now, there are about 22,000 taxis, mostly powered by diesel engines, shuttling passengers around the Jewish state. Experts say diesel emissions are the most carcinogenic and dangerous to man. The environmentally friendly hybrids, on the other hand, are expected to bring about a direct reduction in air pollution and hopefully create a healthier atmosphere for the Israeli public. And by the way, the Jewish National Fund nonprofit group is so impressed, it's agreed to invest nearly $8 million in the state's initiative. And now for the Hebrew word of the day. A lot of things in life demand closer investigation, so whether you're the Prime Minister or Scooby-Doo and the gang, you should expect our next word at some point in your life. Lahkol, meaning to investigate. Now, a chakira or investigation isn't the only next step of lahkol. Lahkol can also mean to research. So if you're wondering when the best time of year to travel is, you can say zman lahkol, or time to investigate. When you're discovering new coins in the heart of Jerusalem, you can channel your inner choker, or researcher. Just don't let the chakira scare you. Even if you're reaching for the stars, just think of astronaut Neil Armstrong, who said that in much of society, research means to investigate something you do not know or understand. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast.
ILTV's weather forecast is sponsored by Adopt a Savta, taking care of Israel's lonely Holocaust survivors.
Tonight will be cold with scattered showers and a low of 48 or 9 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow you can expect it to remain cold and partly cloudy. The high for the day should be around 60 or 16 degrees Celsius. All right, everybody, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.85 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. Thanks for watching and see you tonight.